This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, we've packed a number of shows together to give you some highlights. I know you're going to enjoy the show. Thank you for being with us today. Brian, welcome to the show. You have some skill sets that our team needs to learn, honestly, a lot better. And we need somebody like yourself to help us walk through some of this. So I'm thankful for this conversation today. I know the listeners do as well, because we're all trying to grow our brand. And man, if somebody says digital marketing, sometimes I'm like, what is that again? What does that mean? How do we do that and do that well? And that is your expertise. Tell us, I know you've been doing it. You mentioned for like 15 years or more, but give us a little more about that background. How did you get into this? And let's jump into our specific niche too.
I got into digital marketing back in like the early 2000s. So I got involved. I don't know if you're familiar with a platform called Upwork. I got involved before Upwork. I got involved back when it was Odesk. So I started dabbling around on websites, stuff like that, figured out kind of how SEO worked. And then I hopped on there and started doing it for people for like $20 an hour, found out I was pretty decent at it. And then I grew my whole business on freelancing. And then about 6-7 years ago, I got into real estate investing too. And I started marketing for myself here in Pittsburgh, and we crushed it. So that's basically how I got into this space, the real estate versus just traditional digital marketing. Nice.
Wow. No, it's incredible. So I'm looking forward to this. Tell me, just for the listener that's brand new to this, what is digital marketing? Why do they need it?
Yeah, sure. So digital marketing is displaying ads, or not even necessarily ads, having a presence online. So you can do multiple different ways. You have SEO, which is ranking in the free section of Google. You have Google pay-per-click, which is paying Google to be at the top of their search engine and show ads there. And then you also have Facebook ads, which is showing ads in Facebook's newsfeed. Plus you have all kinds of other ones like Pinterest, stuff like that. But I focus on those three.
Okay. Where should someone start? Like you mentioned those three things. Go ahead.
Yeah, normal. So each is different. So SEO has a very high return on your investment. It takes a long time to start seeing traction though, because you do something and what you're trying to do is optimize your website to be relevant for what the search engine wants you to, what you're trying to rank for. For example, if you're trying to rank for sell your house, you need to make a page that's relevant for that keyword. And then you have to wait for Google to look at your website, see if they determine it's also relevant, and then they move you up the search engine. So it's real slow because you're not paying anything. It's just we're optimizing to be there.
You mentioned like free or you're not paying anything. Is that, as far as it just sitting there and Google being able to search the site and see those keywords, right? But actually like hiring an SEO company or somebody to help you with that could be expensive, right? Or what? Yeah. Walk through that just briefly.
Yeah. So if you're going to hire an SEO company, the things you want, it could be expensive. It's usually $1,500, $2,000 a month and up. You can get people cheaper. You're kind of going to get what you pay for. With SEO too, there's different things on it. You have on-page SEO, which is optimizing and pretty much optimizing and changing things on your actual website. So your blog, your title tags, your content on your website. Then you have off-page SEO, which is link building. What that is, Google and the search engines kind of look at links coming to your website. And what I mean by that is a different website has a link on your website that someone can click and come to your website. They look at those like votes. So if you have your on page is optimized really well, and then you also have people linking to your website, giving those votes, it shows a little bit of credibility and that helps you rank there. But yeah, hiring a firm, it can be free if you do it yourself, or you hire a firm, you're looking usually a couple grand a month.
What's something, we won't spend a ton of time on SEO, but what's something somebody should be thinking about now if they're first building their website, or maybe as they move forward, writing blogs or doing things on their website? How can they be kind of optimizing for SEO so they don't have to hire somebody, at least right now, maybe they're on a tight budget?
Yeah. So what I would do if I was doing it on my own, I would there's tools called SEMrush. There's a tool called AHREFs, AHREFs.com. You can look at those, and what you do is you want to type in what phrase. So say you're writing a blog. Think about the phrase somebody would type into the search engine to find that blog. Go type it into one of those tools and do keyword research. What it's going to show how many people are searching for that phrase. So sell my house fast or sell my home fast. Which one do you want to write on the page? Which one are people more searching for? And then what you want to do when you're writing that content, make sure you have the keyword you're targeting in your title. It's a title tag. your meta description, put it in your H1 tag, and then put it a couple times in your body content so that the search engine, when they're looking at the page, they can tell what it's about. You have to have the words on the page that you're trying to rank for so they know what your page is about.
Great tips. What's an H1 tag?
H1 tag. So if you're on a website, the big bold headline of the page, that's the H1 tag.
Okay. No, that's great to know, man. Some great tips right there. I mean, those websites alone, right? As you are trying to title your blog that you just wrote, or, I mean, that's great, man. Take a few extra minutes and figure that out. So let's jump into like the Facebook ads, pay-per-click, maybe briefly, what do those do for you? Why should the listener be thinking about using something like a Facebook ad or pay-per-click campaign?
Okay, so both of the platforms, you can pay to be in front of the audience immediately. So it's like, okay, I stick a campaign up, people see me tomorrow. Versus SEO, I build my website, they see me in 6 months. So it's kind of paid marketing is kind of like renting a house. SEO is like owning a house. So while you're paying Facebook, while you're paying Google, you're being shown. Once you pull your ad spend away, you're not. Differences are Facebook, you're paying per impression, which means you're paying Facebook take $20 every time they show your ad 1,000 times in your area. Google pay-per-click, you're paying per click. So in the real estate space, it can get very expensive. You could be paying $20 or $30 per click. Versus on Facebook, you're not in direct competition with other investors. You're competing with the bakery and shoe store down the street just because you're competing on impressions in the area. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. So let's say we're going to start a Facebook campaign. Many of our listeners are trying to market to investors, right? It's a lot of our business and trying to get our name out there, get our brand out there online. So we look official, right? We look professional, and so we trigger, just them wanting to get to know more about us. So we build that know, like, trust, and what also is missing that loyalty component. So eventually, but they first have to see us, right, somewhere, and oftentimes now, and one of the most efficient ways is through something like this online. So help us walk through that a little bit, as far as a Facebook ad or pay-per-click, whichever you think is going to be most beneficial for the listener or myself, as we're trying to market to investors. And like you mentioned before we got off show or started recording, so we don't look like just some guy off the street, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I would start with Facebook first. Facebook, reason is Facebook gives you have a lot of opportunity. You can make videos, show images, stuff like that, versus Google's primarily text-based. So you can put like a person behind your business easier on Facebook. So what I would do, say I'm an investor, I buy flipper, things like that, and I'm trying to raise funds. What I would start at the beginning. Number one, I would have my ads targeting people that want to sell their properties. Okay. Like we buy houses, we buy property, stuff like that. And then on that Facebook page, what the properties that I'm getting, I would start showing before and after pictures. I would have like video walkthroughs, stuff like that. Testimonials are huge. Testimonials work really well as Facebook ads. Because your ad text will sell what you're trying to do. Like, hey, we buy properties, we close fast, stuff like that. But your actual video could be someone talking about at the closing table, wherever, hey, this is what our experience was. It was so easy. So use things like that also to help build the credibility of your business there. Yeah, that's huge too, because social proof, especially when you're looking for someone to give you money, you have to be pretty credible. There's a website that I use too. It's called Video Peel. And what it is, I don't know what they charge or anything. I'm grandfathered into one of their old ones, but you can send a link to current clients. And it's nice because they click the link and it opens a camera right on their phone. They press record and it records the testimony and sends it right over to you. So there's a tip for you. But those are huge just because you can talk well about yourself. But if other people are talking really good about you, that goes a long way.
Incredible. I mean, that tip right there alone is worth the show. I hope the listeners are paying attention to that, because I know, we have a process now personally that, somebody on our team reaches back out to investors and says, hey, would you provide a testimonial? Or maybe they say something really great already. And we ask them, hey, could we use that, as a testimonial and obviously get their approval? But that is a great option right there, that videopeel.com. I'm going to remember that. I hope the listener will as well, because it goes a long ways when talking to other investors, when they can see that, right? That proof, that social proof. And so I guess dive into what are some issues we're going to have maybe with Facebook or pay-per-click, or some things that we should expect, or do's and don'ts, pros, cons, those types of things that we need to know as we're just getting started to run these ads.
Yeah, sure. So first thing that I see this a lot too with people just getting into Facebook. There's something called a Facebook pixel. And what that is, that's a snippet of code that you put on your website. And what it is, it allows Facebook to track user behavior. So someone clicks a Facebook ad, comes to your website, it allows them to see, did they submit a form or did they only go to one page or did they call the phone number? And if you don't have that on your website, you're probably wasting money. I mean, you might get a lead or might get what you're looking for. But for everybody doing Facebook, make sure you have that on there. It's super easy. You go right into your ad manager and click pixels, take the code, copy and paste it right into the header of your website. That's very, very important if you'd be running Facebook.
Okay. Facebook pixels. I remember we built our first website many years ago, and it was like 2 years later, somebody said something about Facebook pixel. And I'm like, what is that? Like what, and then sure enough, we look and it wasn't even turned on. I'm like, are you kidding? After all this time, it wasn't even turned on. And so, I appreciate you bringing that up. What else? What's something that I guess most people miss, or maybe a couple of things that even experienced people would miss as they're starting something like this?
Okay, so two things you're going to want to do. Once you have the Facebook pixel installed on your website, build an audience. Build an audience in Facebook. You can go in there of everybody that engages with your page and goes to your website. What that allows you to do is retarget them. So say someone comes to your website, wants to sell their property or whatever it is, they don't fill out a form. That allows you to show ads and follow them in Facebook or Instagram, kind of like when you go looking at shoes and then your whole Facebook feed's filled with shoes. So that's very important. Another thing would be set up event tracking on the Facebook pixel too. So if you're running lead generation, you're trying to get people to fill out a form, there's a specific code you can put on the page after you fill out the form on your thank you page. It would be a lead event. Put that on there too, because then you can tell Facebook will give you whatever you're asking for. So if you want likes, they'll give you that. If you want link clicks, they'll give you that. So you want to tell them, hey, I want leads. Put the lead code on the website, show them what a lead is, and then they're going to give that to you.
Nice. I know one of your specialties, are finding distressed properties, right? Using this technique and being able to find distressed properties. What about, you're building these leads, you have all these leads coming in. I know you have some methods maybe what about leads you don't want?
Well, that's a good question. So I invest in one zip code only in the city of Pittsburgh, and I market to the whole city of Pittsburgh. So what I do is I partnered up with a wholesaler. I shoot him over the leads. He runs them, and we just joint venture and split the profit 50-50. So yeah, if you have overflow lead, don't just not call them and think they're out of the area. Find out who wants those because they're valuable to somebody.
Nice. Wow. And I guess thinking through SEO, Facebook, pay-per-click, how often do you see people doing this themselves versus having somebody on their team do it versus hiring a third party completely?
Yeah. So I see some people do it. I don't really know the percents of it. Some people do it. Most people that are successful in business, especially in real estate, don't want to spend the time to learn Facebook. It's not profitable. Focus on what you're doing. Some people do want to do it themselves. And if you know how to do it, then you can hire someone in-house too and oversee them, make sure they're doing it correctly, things like that. And then other people just say, hey, I don't want to deal with this. I would just want to outsource it. So I guess there's no right or wrong. If you want to learn it, good. But I tell people, look where your time's best spent, profitable wise,
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, listeners heard me talk about that so often. And that's why I encourage people, find somebody that's an expert like yourself, doing that thing, right? It's going to happen so much faster than you trying to learn it and really taking you away from those most profitable tasks that you could be working on. Okay. So, I guess if you had to pick one, where would you say start? I think you said Facebook earlier, but is that kind of across the board, or is that for a specific type of industry? And I mean, obviously for us, like I said, trying to market to investors, what would you say if we have a smaller budget, or, which one?
I would start on Facebook. The reason I say that is, especially in the real estate space, some other spaces, maybe not, but in the real estate space, because of the cost, we can get in front of way more people for the same dollar than in Google pay-per-click. And also, if we're trying to get in front of investors too, like I said, you can do videos, things like that. Like the branding's huge. So you have two different components if you're trying to get in front of investors. Number one, you're trying to generate leads for yourself for deals that you're trying to do. And then also you're trying to get in front of investors, showing them, hey, I'm credible. So if you can have both of those going at the same time, it's like, okay, we're generating leads. So they see you have a very credible presence on that side and a good lead flow. And then also you have a separate campaign going for investors. Plus they all see the retargeting. You can put, like, once an investor comes to your website, you can retarget them with testimonials, things like that too, which is huge. Sometimes you may have a cold ad coming to your website just to get them to click to come through to introduce your brand to them. And then you want to nurture them. That's where the retargeting comes from. And that's where you'd stick testimonial videos, pictures of your team, maybe videos of you talking, giving tips, stuff like that. So it's kind of like an overall kind of encompassing thing there.
And how often are these things changing to where, hey, well, we've got to learn something else, or we need to change our plan here?
Pretty frequently. Like, I know this year with Facebook, Apple just had an update, iOS 14 update, which completely changed a ton of stuff in the real estate space and a couple other ones too. Basically what Apple's saying is, hey, you have to click a button and give permission for anyone advertising for us to give your data to them now. So the Facebook pixel that we're talking about, building audiences, lists, showing Facebook who's a lead. If someone on an Apple does not click the button to share their information, we now no longer are able to give that information to Facebook to optimize. So that created a lot of different things. Like, you have to verify your domain in Facebook now. You have to set up event priority optimization, stuff like that. So things are changing all the time. So you just have to keep up on it.
Again, why you need an expert like yourself on your team to help you with these things. What kind of budget should somebody plan for running ads on Facebook?
I'd say it depends on your market. So say you're trying to generate local deals, stuff like that. I would say you're looking at probably $1,500 a month. If you're going national, I don't know, like $3,000 or $4,000. You don't want to get too crazy. Okay, so national campaigns, I'd probably recommend like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Local campaigns, like $1,500, something like that. So depending on how aggressive you want to get, I usually won't start with a super high budget. You could even start with maybe $500 too if you wanted, just to dip your water if you're doing it yourself. You don't want to spend a whole ton of money in there because some of the ads you're doing may not convert and some of them will. So you want to find out which ones are working, then divert more money there.
So that's a good point there. You said which ones are working. So how many should we have and how should they differ so we can test that?
Normally I'll build a campaign. So I'll build a campaign. So in Facebook, you have a campaign structure, then you have an ad set, and then you have your ad. So normally what I'm going to do is build a campaign. In the ad set, we're going to be able to choose like which audiences or which interests, because you can target interest, demographics, things like that, if you're in certain industries. And then, so normally I'll do one campaign, a couple ad sets to test those, and then about 4 or 5 ads in each, depending on budget though. If you're only doing, say, $20 a day, I'd probably have a campaign with one ad set, maybe 2 or 3 ads. So the more ads you have, the higher the budget you're going to want to allocate.
Okay. No, that's just some great tips. I mean, I think that's like I would say the wave of the future, but it's like been here for a long time, right? These things. What about, or anything on that? Like, is this like here to stay, this type of ads, anything else or any other kind of ads that we should be thinking about?
I think this is here to stay. Well, especially you got to look at your demographic. Like, who are you targeting?
Right.
So if we're in real estate, we're targeting older demographic, depending on what you're doing in real estate, but we're targeting older people. So Facebook and Instagram are where they are. If you're doing something where you're targeting younger people, you're probably going to want to be on TikTok, things like that. And it's constantly changing too. There's always new platforms coming out. So you're going to want to first think, okay, who do I want to get in front of? What platform or where are they hanging out? That's where you're going to want to advertise.
Awesome. Well, just so many great tips, Brian. Anything else about Facebook ads or pay-per-click, SEO, anything like that you want to leave the listeners with before we move to a few final questions?
Yeah, that's probably about it. One thing I would say is if you want to try it, just do it. Don't go down the rabbit hole of just researching. Like, set something up, even if it's only for $5 a day, just learn how it works, because once you start doing it, you'll progress and you'll start learning, versus a lot of people just keep diving into blogs, trying to learn how to do it, and they never take action.
David, welcome to the show. It's been great, like getting to know you over the last few months and just seeing your progress and learning more about your story. I just think you are going to have a lot of value to share with the listeners today. They're going to learn a lot from you and how you've done it, right? I mean, the success, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I mean, David raised $1.4 million on his first capital raise with no prior experience as a syndicator. And so talk about that transition a little bit. You're a broker. Now you're moving into the investor side. What were some of the first steps? How did you do that or think about that?
Yeah, great question. It's been a journey. It wasn't clear cut. It wasn't, oh, one day I'm on this side and now I'm transitioning to the other. This is back in 2015. Basically, 2015 through 2017 was this world of just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life for the next 15 to 20 years. And so I reached out throughout that time period, reached out to a lot of different people, just exploring a lot of different options. And I had a lunch with a friend, just reached out to him and said, I'm just exploring options, trying to figure things out, and would really love to just take you out to lunch and pick your brain. He had been very successful in the multifamily space, small multifamily space as a developer, incredibly successful. And so we sat down for lunch. And during that lunch, he said, David, you need to get into multifamily. You need to get into investment property. You've got to leave the residential brokerage stuff behind, the sales team stuff behind, and get into this space. And I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that, but that was the catalyst for me to say, okay, yeah, I can see a path here. And so ultimately, I immediately started putting things in motion. I immediately started jumping on podcasts and reading books and taking courses and learning as much as I could about the multifamily space. And I was intrigued by it. And ultimately, I felt like the best path for me to get to where I wanted to go was to use my skills as a broker to serve multifamily property investors. And so I immediately started to transition my own personal business with an emphasis in the multifamily space. And when I say multifamily, I'm talking small multifamily property. So my brokerage business is focused on serving buy and hold investors who are looking to acquire small multifamily property for their own personal portfolios. So this is ranging from as small as a duplex up to roughly $3 to $4 million in value. And so I really utilized my marketing and my operations skills that I had developed to help investors find that type of product in my market. And so over the last few years, that's what our business has been focused on, is serving buyers of small multifamily property. There was a problem about 18 months, 24 months ago. I started to realize, my goodness, the market is really challenging here in Salt Lake. And the type of deals that I was able to present to my investor network, I had built up a pretty significant investor network through my marketing efforts and branding efforts. And
but that was buyers, right? That was buyers for your brokerage business, right? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So these are people that are interested in buying small multifamily here in Utah. And so I would try to put deals in front of them. The challenge was, there's a lot of great reasons to be investing in Utah right now. Cash flow is not necessarily one of those at this point, especially in that small multifamily space. And so what I started to do is explore alternatives to help my investors achieve the yield, achieve the cash on cash returns that they were looking for. And so I started to explore different models. Ultimately, syndication was what I really started to pursue. And so about 18 months ago, we started to focus heavily on networking with great operators in other parts of the country and using those relationships to acquire large commercial multifamily property, and then bringing my investor network into those deals as passive investors and limited partners in those deals.
Nice. It's great to think about that transition, because you had skill sets, you had a network, right, as well, that you could transition right into this new field. Can you speak to, though, maybe how you introduced that to that network, right? Because that can be kind of an aha moment, or not an aha moment, but like a shock moment, right, to your network, and thinking, in your case, you were already in real estate, which is very helpful, I think, to this point. However, a lot of times we have a network that we have not considered or thought about, right? And the first time you present something like this, it's like, well, wait a minute. In my case, they knew me as, in a totally different industry in the very beginning, completely different thing, right, than real estate. And so it's like, wait a minute, when did you do this? And so how did you expose that to your network? What were maybe some of the responses or feedback?
To a certain degree, Whitney, it's still something that I'm working through, right? There's really two facets to my business today. The first is the brokerage services here locally in Utah. And then the other is the private equity side and the syndication side of the business. The way that I approached it was, this has been strategic, right? I sort of glossed over it all, but I realized, okay, eventually I want to be involved in large commercial multifamily acquisitions. what's my path to get there? Well, I'm already in the real estate space, right? So step one was let's get a little bit closer to that space, but not a huge leap from residential all the way to large commercial multifamily syndication. I said, let's start here by serving investors in the small multifamily space. Let's build up that investor network, and then we can transition and present opportunities in front of them that may not be exactly what they were looking for, but still adjacent to what they were looking for. And the response, I didn't know how people would respond to it, to be honest. The first deal that we did was in Kansas City, 164 unit C-class asset there with a great operator, a great partner in that local market that I had developed a relationship with in the prior year and a half. And when I took that deal to them, I didn't know. In fact, I told my partner there, I said, look, there's a lot that I can bring to the table here from an underwriting perspective, from an overall strategy perspective, from an asset management perspective. But from a capital perspective, I think I can do this. I have a network here, but I didn't know. In fact, I told them, everybody had sort of a benchmark that they wanted to hit from a capital raising perspective. And I said, look, I could completely bomb on this and bring 250,000 to the table. I have no idea. I don't know what to expect. And they said, that's fine. We've got it covered. Whatever you can bring will be helpful. I said, all right, great. So put a lot of effort and time and energy into prepping the deal with my investors, giving them a preview, going out and visiting the property, sending my investor network a preview of the deal before we actually released it, and helping them to become comfortable. I even did an interview with my partner out there to help them become familiar with my partner out there, familiar with the market out there. And then ultimately on the day that we released the deal, we did the webinar, released the deal to our investor network. And within 48 hours, I had $1.4 million of reservations on that deal, drastically overshot my benchmark. And that was my aha moment. That's like, wow, I've got a network here that I've spent literally years developing, and I've done enough to help them understand that I know what I'm doing. I have a great network of quality operators in markets that will help them to achieve their investing goals, which is ultimately right now our focus is on Midwest properties that have a great blend of cash flow and upside through forced appreciation. I don't know. That was probably a lot more than we know.
That was many great points there. And a couple of things, you kind of gloss over, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is really good. I mean, 48 hours, you had 1.4 million committed. That is not the normal. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's so good. But a couple of things you mentioned there, I wanted to go back to, and we won't spend a ton of time here, but you got to know this operator. You said 1 to 1.5 years, you got to know this operator. So important, right? So important. You said that very quick, but I just wanted to highlight that, this wasn't a fly by night thing. You reach out. I've had so many people reach out over the last many years, a week before they're closing. Hey, Whitney, I need you to raise $3 million. I'm like, I've never even met you before. Right. It's just not an option, not an option. So you spent a lot of time in due diligence, getting to know this operator long before the deal ever came along. And then also you were upfront with him, about, you don't know what you can do, but you had other skill sets that obviously you were providing to the deal and going there and helping them with different things. And obviously the capital was a big benefit as well. But that alone helped build your confidence for one, but it also helped your network, right? To see, hey, David's doing this thing. And it almost is a great transition from where you're at in real estate, right? They can see that, hey, David's going to have these opportunities for us. And even if they didn't invest in that one, it just exposes their mind to knowing that you are in this, right? But then you said that you spent a lot of time prepping investors about the deal. Provide some insight there, how you did that. And a couple of things you said, like video at the property, video with the operator, both great things. What were some other things? How did you prep them, lay out some of that timeline and how you did that?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. When I started to determine that I wanted to go into this space, there were a few criteria that I got really clear on for the next deal that I wanted to work on. Number one was operator. Before anything else, I was most interested in working with a local operator that was boots on the ground in the market that we were buying a property in. And that I had a prior existing relationship with those people, that I had a level of trust and confidence in their ability to execute on the deal. is I'm bringing my investors into that deal. That's most important for me, is someone that I'm working with that has integrity, that's going to do the right thing, regardless of the circumstance, regardless if a deal goes the wrong way. So that was most important to me. The second was the deal itself. I wanted a deal that had a cash flow opportunity with some value add upside through forced appreciation. And then market, we're pretty open to all markets at this point, but with an emphasis on Midwest markets. And so that was the criteria that I set. Once I had found that opportunity through my network of operators, then what we did is we recorded a webinar. Me and my partner recorded a webinar. We talked about the local market that he was in, his background, his experience, his team. And that was a precursor. Before we had even presented an actual opportunity to my investor network, we recorded that and I sent it out to them, letting them know that we were actively looking for a deal in this market. And this is the reason why, and with this operator, so that they could become exposed to that partner of mine and also reach a level of comfort with their experience and track record of success. Then from there, once we had the deal under contract, I traveled out to the property. I met with the team out there. We did some due diligence. We recorded some videos. I previewed some of the other comparable properties in the market there, as well as obviously our property. And then I took that video before we had even released a formal webinar or anything else, just as a more of like a teaser to my investor network, or just to help them raise their comfort level of doing a deal with me and with this partner. We sent that out. They got to see some video of the property. They got to see a basic breakdown of what the investment was going to look like. Then from there, once we had done those two things, we had sort of given them a sense of what they should expect moving forward. Then we sent out the actual webinar, the investment webinar with the investment summary. And from there, people were ready to move forward. I think we'd done a good enough job of prepping them and getting them ready for that moment that within 48 hours, we had those reservations.
I think it paid forward in such a big way, right? You had answered many questions that they would have had, and they probably wouldn't have committed as fast, right? But you had already answered many of their questions that they would have had about the operator, the market, and whatnot, long before you even sent the deal out. I just think it's very smart that you handled it that way, especially for the first one, right? And it'd be great if you can do that every time, but it's not. I would say it's not always possible, depending on the timelines of the deal and things that happen. However, on the first one, I mean, that just worked so well. And as you do more deals, your list they're going to know that, it may be even in the same market, you're right. And they're already familiar with the market and things like that, but it's not going to be, that shock again that, hey, David's doing this, large commercial real estate deals now versus small multifamily or residential that they may have known you by. So speak to, though, let's transition a little bit to just your personal brand, speak to that quickly, and then we'll have to move on.
When I started reading and listening to podcasts and books about real estate syndication, of course, I call him the godfather of real estate syndication, Joe Fairless, your friend. I read his book, and in there, he emphasizes a lot the importance of building this personal brand, as well as you have done, and you really emphasize this to your listeners. And so I started a podcast knowing nothing about real estate syndication, nothing about commercial real estate. I started a podcast, and it's called The Apartment Investing Journey. And the premise of the whole podcast was going to be about my own personal journey in this real estate investing space. And the whole goal was to interview others who had gone before me. And what's the greatest thing about our industry and being in this space is how willing people are to share that have already gone before you, that have done the things that you want to do and are willing to share. And so we started the podcast in 2019, and we're about 140 episodes in at this point in time. You're pushing me to release more and more, and I appreciate that push. I don't know that I'm ever going to do it daily, but we'll see. I don't know. So that was a big part of it. And then starting in my communication with my investors, just helping them to understand that this is a space I'm in, that I'm serious about, that I know what I'm doing, that I have a network of operators and deal flow that are going to be beneficial to them and their investing goals. And I started that communication early on, but ultimately the podcast was huge in building that brand. And then hiring a couple coaches along the way to really guide and direct me on how to build this out so that my investors get the most value from what I'm doing.
Incredible. Speak to, what have you personally learned from podcasting now 140 shows, and maybe one thing that it's done for your network?
Well, for me personally, Whitney, I know no one else deals with this, but the limiting beliefs that go through my head, I know I'm the only one that deals with that, right? Yeah. You know what? The best part about interviewing impressive people that have gone before me is they give you a level of confidence to take action, to take positive action on a daily basis. And I know I've asked you in the past, do you ever feel uncomfortable with this next step? And, of course, the answer is absolutely. And I've learned that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to push through those ceilings of achievement. And every level takes a sense of stepping into the darkness to a certain degree and moving forward with confidence and belief in yourself and belief in what you're learning and executing on and belief in your partners. And so that's probably the number one thing that I get out of the podcast is that motivation and encouragement and the breaking through those limiting beliefs. And then from a strategic perspective, we could go on for a long time, but there's a lot of strategic, tactical advice that I'm able to glean from those interviews that are very helpful to me and my listeners.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.